Welcome to Data Security Over Coffee. That's DSOC to those in the know.
Where the only thing more dangerous than a zero-day exploit is Chad from accounting clicking on every single email attachment.
From password post-its hidden under keyboards
to that one guy who keeps using password 123 despite our 47 security memos. We're here to talk about the threats you never knew you should be terrified of.
I'm Dr. Joe Harford.
And I'm Angie. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Singer Keating.
Bringing you the latest in cybersecurity nightmares and risk management drama.
Because somewhere out there, a hacker's trying to get into your company's data.
And Karen from HR just clicked on another free iPhone pop-up. This is Data Security Over Coffee, DSOC, where every episode is a penetration test you didn't ask for. Jenny, you did not disappoint. You smiled right when my little sister talked about, did you turn it on again and off again? I love it. That's the best part of the green room. That is literally every single time, without hesitation. We had somebody on here, we won't say who. They were very serious. They're a very serious risk manager. And he just lost it when she did that. So I was like, this is great. See, we do have humans here. This is not AI generated or Autobot generated or what have you. So,
but you can tell that was acting because I'm never that nice.
Yeah.
You come in my office and you're having your 10th tech problem of the day. I'm like, Jesus, did you try turning it off and turning it back on again?
Yeah.
That's how I say it in real life.
I have 25 years of scars on my back. If I wasn't uncomfortable with my body, I would take my shirt off, but I don't think I'm going to do that. But in all seriousness, Data Security Over Coffee for the month of April. We have back a very special guest and friend, Jenny, that we got to hang out with in San Diego last month at the iSigma conference. And when I was trying to figure out who we were going to have for our guest in April, Angie said, don't be stupid and ask Jenny, because I really like Jenny. Jenny is one of those people that she may be, and I don't think she'll be offended by this, she may be short in stature, but let me tell you something. Do not make her angry, and most certainly do not talk to her like she's an idiot, because she is far from that. Two of probably the most strong-willed women that I know are on Data Security Over Coffee today. My business partner and little sister of 25, almost 26 years, Angie Singer Keating, and our friend Jenny. So, Jenny, for those people, for the 285 people that are watching today, she doesn't know. She's jealous because she doesn't have control, and she says, oh, I want control, but she doesn't want to do the work. She just wants to show off and be pretty. Jenny, who are you? Where do you work? And what the heck are you doing here today?
Sure. Hi there. My name's Jenny Heyns. I am the Senior Vice President at CSR Privacy Solutions in sunny Florida. I love cybersecurity and privacy. I've been in technology for over 30 years, focused on software development. But over the last probably 15, I have had extensive experience in addition to software development in the cybersecurity and privacy space. So it really has become a passion of mine. And I appreciate the shout out from both of you. I also feel like we have developed a great friendship. And so this is really exciting. I appreciate you guys asking me to come back today and sharing some of my thoughts.
Sure.
Well, and Jenny, I have to apologize to you because exactly 6 weeks ago, I put in my calendar that my farrier was coming to the barn today. My big brother proceeded to double book me. So I hope you're not offended that I look like absolute garbage. I smell even worse. And my horse was a complete butthead today with the farrier. So I'm a little bit frazzled this morning. And I don't want that to reflect on my respect for you.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I actually thought you had a cute little outfit on. So I was totally fine with it.
It is very cute if you don't smell it or see all the horsehair all over it. It's very cute.
That's good.
I'm going to begin to try to corral the cats. Um, so leadership, AI, legacy leadership, young leadership, and everything kind of in between. So Jenny and I were talking before about just some of the challenges that we see and why people are still not adopting even the most fundamental security controls, like a password keeper or enabling MFA. And, you know, I watch the top of her head come off like I normally watch Angie's head when I tell her these things.
Yeah.
And so I have some information that you cannot see. It's true because Chat GPT told me it's true. So I have a question for the two of you. It apparently 83% of small and medium-sized businesses in the United States in 2026 believe that artificial intelligence has in fact increased their threat level. They are scared to death. They are worried, they're scared, they're freaked out. Okay. But only half of that population has done anything at all with security controls. Why? Why do you believe that's the case?
Ooh. So, Angie, are you okay if I start?
You're the guest. You always get the first word, and if you want, you can choose to have the last word, baby.
All right.
It does not happen in our relationship. I want you to make sure.
Obviously, it
I
doesn't
do
happen.
not get
Exactly.
the same luxury.
So that is a very interesting stat. I would say fundamentally, I agree with what that stat is saying. I always believe that with AI, you always have to double check your numbers, right? But the reality comes down to why is that? You know, that's what you asked. Why is that? One, I think small to medium-sized businesses have always been an underserved population where technology in general, you know, it costs money, right? And so small to medium-sized businesses are often trying to just make it, right? Or they're trying to focus on their core competency. So today, technology doesn't have to be that expensive, right? It's important to be able to, you know, not necessarily take 100 steps, but let's take the first 10, right? I always say, taking the first step is always going to give your biggest bang. So that step, if you look at out of 100, maybe $10, right? But you're going to get, you know, 60% of the way there. So your biggest bang is always at the start. And small to medium-sized businesses don't understand that because traditionally it was so expensive. They're like, I can't afford an extra, you know, $2,000 a month, right, to do that. Well, why not afford $100, right? So like, or $200 here. Let's try to piecemeal it and make good decisions. And leadership needs to talk to those subject matter experts in order for them to make that good decision, right? Instead of just turning their head and saying it won't happen to me, because it's happening and they just don't realize it.
Yeah, I agree with Jenny on many of those points, and I would add that I think to a certain degree the tide is turning. We are seeing more manufacturing companies coming on board as clients. You know, Joe and I stick really close to something called our TCP, which is our typical client profile. Mm-hmm. If someone comes to us and they are not in that typical client profile, we're not going to be working with them unless they're a referral from somebody, a client we already like and enjoy working with and respect, or there's some other compelling reason. But that TCP is largely made up of highly regulated industries in the small and mid-sized sector. And historically, manufacturing has not fallen into that group. State government did not traditionally fall into that group. Education did not fall into that group. And so, but what we're seeing now is we're seeing more opportunities coming from outside of our TCP, where I think we're going to probably, if not in 26, I think the data in 27 will show that we need to expand that TCP. And we probably need, you know, it's easy when a client comes to us or a potential client comes to us and they're in healthcare or they service healthcare, because we know the HIPAA security rule inside and out. We know how rigorously it's enforced through the Office of Civil Rights. But that we don't have that luxury with some of the manufacturing or other types of clients. So we're going to have to start, I think, in our sales discovery process, asking different questions around what their cyber posture is at the moment to find out if we should include them in our TCP, or we should take a chance on working with them. Because at the end of the day, when you're a cybersecurity company, if your client has a security incident, it can really reflect poorly on you. And, you know, it's hard in many cases, if that happens, to not look like you're throwing your client under the bus because you want to scream from the mountaintops, we've been telling them for 3 years to close that thing or remediate that thing,
Right.
That was the root cause of their security incident, but you can't. So I think the tide is turning, and I think that we will continue to see more non-traditional, in the sense of our typical client profile, asking a lot more questions. I also think cyber insurance carriers are driving a lot of that as well.
Absolutely. And I will add something. You know, we talk about AI, right? You know, 10 years ago, AI was still a part of the topic, but it was a little bit distant, right? It costs more to utilize it. And so small to medium-sized businesses were like, oh, well, AI is out there. They talked about it because it was in the news, right? But they didn't talk about it because it was on their desktop at this point. Now it's completely different. AI is so available to small to medium-sized businesses now. They need to embrace and understand what that impact is to their security. And so, yes, it provides ease, but it also provides risk. So I think that the tide is kind of turning and shifting for those small to medium-sized businesses, because before they're like, yeah, we're not using AI. Or if we're using it because a vendor has it within their system and we're using that vendor. So we're not responsible for that. But now they're utilizing it every day, whether they realize it or not. And so they're like, okay, now I have to understand a little bit, or we're hoping they're saying, now I've got to understand this a little bit more.
Well, there's this continuous hype cycle of, oh my God, it's taking all the software development jobs. Oh no, it's not. It's creating slop that experienced developers have to spend their time cleaning up. And that kind of pendulum keeps swinging back and forth because of a lot of the marketing hype, the sales hype around AI, because ultimately this stuff has to pay for itself. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the tools that I have preferred to use now, even with my paid version, I'm asking like getting 3 prompts in and they're saying, you're out of credits for the day. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I haven't even gotten started. I used to spend all day using this thing. So I think that there's also, you know, kind of some talk right now that because AI companies have got to monetize, we're going to get to a point where some AI usage is going to be more expensive than a human doing the job, because of the cost of tokens and the emphasis on using it. So I think there's all kinds of ways that this whole thing can shake out. The one thing I'm absolutely certain of is what you said. Use of AI in an environment where it has not been planned, evaluated, the vendor vetted, and then the workflow where it's going to be used, assessed for risk for those vulnerability points. That's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for a data breach, loss of intellectual property. all kinds of, you know, bad potential things happening in the corporate world.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing that's interesting is when we go out and we talk to, there are a number of trade associations that we belong to. And just anecdotally, when we talk to them, what I find at least is less than 30% of them have anything that even resembles any form of an AI usage policy.
Mhm.
There's no conversation, there's no guardrails, there's no understanding. And I bring it up because obviously every conference we go to now, every vendor's got AI splashed all over the place, and it's going to be the next greatest thing, and you can build an application, blah, blah, it's noise. But there's those things, policy development is fundamental. Like that's the foundation of building a strong security posture. I mean, there are other things, obviously, but starting with that policy. I think that the other thing I found to be fascinating is you start taking a look again at data points. You know, we talked about security awareness training for the last decade, you know, and there's plenty of vendors that are out there, and some of them have morphed and so on and so forth. But when we talk to clients, I would say today, roughly 90% of them have some security awareness training at onboarding. That number becomes far less during the tenure of an employee.
Yep.
And then when we get into having a conversation, and we did last month with another partner friend of ours, if we start having a conversation around security awareness training based on the psychology of the user, their own risk profile.
Yep.
The three of us on this call have a much different risk profile, but we all get the same training. What?
Right.
And so my point is, now you start walking into this place of the new deep fake fraud. And what does that look like? What are we going to do to help our employees? Like, what are we supposed to do there? How are we supposed to deal with these kind of things in the workplace with our employees if the information I just shared with you about lack of training, or the training isn't all that great to begin with?
Well, you know, I think that training has been one of those things that everybody says is really super important, but yet they only give it one time per year, right? Or one time at new hire, right? And so that's not a reality of good. It's not effective. You know, we believe in, CSR, we build products, right? We don't believe in the one-time training. We believe in the recurring training. People are people. I call us the human firewall, right? The human firewall, just like a actual firewall can fail. The human firewall is the last line of defense. And if we do not educate people and educate them in the way that their brains are going to work, that firewall is going to be weak. So I'm a big proponent on doing recurring training. Statistics say human brain after about 60 days is going to forget what they were trained, and they're going to revert back to their previous behavior. So you got to stop it before that happens. So again, like, we believe training should happen at least every 30 days. So you need to pepper and remind them, reinforce what they learned, and give them some new topics, and do it in a clear, short, concise way. And so if people believe it, like, actually learn that way, and we train in that method, you're going to get the best outcome, right? And so, that's what companies should be adopting. Just like you said, everybody's profile is different, right? So you need to first hone in on the human, right? Do what our brains are going to be doing. And then you leverage the next step of trying to profile and say, all right, Jenny has systems administration access to everything. We're going to make sure Jenny's firewall is really, really strong, right? Versus an individual who just has access to email, right? We're still going to give them the foundation education, but their profile is different. right? So they're
Well,
not
but Jenny,
get nearly as much.
don't forget, this is one of the things we see folks take comfort in, is like, well, that person only accesses email.
Yeah.
When you think
I
about what's
know where
in
you're going.
some people's email,
Yep.
spreadsheets with hundreds of
Yep.
social security numbers, thousands of LabCorp payment records with diagnostic codes and medical records.
Right.
That's one of the areas where people have this, they forget that, unfortunately, and especially in small and mid-sized businesses, people use their email as a file storage.
Yeah.
It's not.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's those attachments. I think one of the things that makes AI so dangerous in small and mid-sized organizations is they have no data governance.
Mhm.
They have very little data management. And so when you toss AI at stuff that's already data spewed all over the network, redundant, never purged according to any kind of disposal policy or anything like that, it's like giving a toddler a knife and scissors and expecting they're going to run around and no harm is going to come to anyone. At some point, they're going to stab the dog, they're going to fall down, and they're going to cut themselves. Tragedy, bad things are going to happen when you do this. So that's, when everybody starts talking about we're going to do this with AI and we're going to do that with AI, you need to have your house in order before you turn that stuff loose. And I know especially younger folks that are graduating from college or recent college graduates, where they're using AI for everything and they're very comfortable coding with it. And they come to their boss and they say, hey, I can do this thing. And I wrote this bot that can do this or that. And I used OpenClaw and it can do this, and this in milliseconds that took a human a couple hours to do. What boss doesn't say, wow, that would save us so much time. That's great. Let's do it. Not realizing the security implications of what they just turned loose, because the kid straight out of college doesn't understand the security implications either, or has that whole, well, it won't happen with my bot because I developed my bot and my bot won't do that.
Right.
And, John and I were watching last week with John Oliver last night. And he had a segment on AI and, the people having psychological hallucinations, the real human impact that just chat bots themselves are having on human beings. It took us probably a decade to really truly understand how harmful social media was to our kids, to older generations, and to anyone really, but those two kind of vulnerable populations. It's going to be way less than a decade before we see the kind of harm that can come from these unregulated chatbots. And the scariest thing of all was that the executives of these AI companies have this same move fast and break things mentality, except the things you're breaking are our children and our brains.
Right.
And it was so tragic and it was so enraging. I would go out on YouTube, watch that segment on AI, because it was just, it was terrifying and it was really enlightening. And especially if you're a parent, you need to watch that segment.
Jenny, just in case you don't know, John is John Morse. John is Angie's husband.
Yeah.
More so than me, incredibly patient. And I pray for him every day, being married to my little sister, because I get away
from him at Sigma.
He does
Very
not.
nice guy.
Yeah, he really is. And luckily, he has a full-time job, so he doesn't have to always be around her, which is good. But he definitely is her caretaker. And like I said, I pray for him daily. So one of the things I wanted to go back to, we talked about, why leaders do or do not do things as it pertains to cybersecurity and risk, et cetera. And I think part of it is driven by, number one, I think we as practitioners have to do an even better job of making sure that cybersecurity speak doesn't sound complicated.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everything has to be dumbed down, but it has to be in a business friendly terminology that works into the same flow as when we have a conversation around accounting and finance. There's a difference. When we talk about operations and marketing, there's a difference, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do a better job with that. I think the other thing is we have to realize that decision making is done in the limbic part of our brain. And no, I'm not that smart. I learned this yesterday from my friend John Moore from More Power Sales. But we make those decisions based upon emotion in the limbic part of our brain. Why does that matter? It matters because if all we ever do is challenge people with logic and data, sure, you can get somebody's attention, but you're not going to move the needle. They will move the needle based on emotion. And emotion can't be fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Emotion has to be, well, look what your peer group is doing. Emotion has to be, look what regulators expect. Or better yet, oh, by the way, do you know that 50% of your customers in 2026 are going to expect you to be able to demonstrate some level of cyber preparedness that's better than your report card and a letter from your mom? Like, I think those are the pieces that we have to start as practitioners to really educate people around, to get them to come to the conversation, listen, and then take action. I really believe that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because you don't even know this yet. Yesterday, I got the renewal quote on one of our errors and omissions policies.
Bum, bum, bum.
Just like 2 years ago, when we first, well, I guess it's 3 years ago now, when we first got our SOC 2 Type 1 audit completed, and that very next time, our insurance premium for our errors and omissions coverage, professional liability, went down.
Yes.
Well, we just moved to SOC 2, and I just got the quote on the renewal quote on our $5 million downstream data liability policy. And now we've moved from SOC 1 to SOC 2, which is even more rigorous. Our premium went down for the year $205. Now that doesn't sound like
No.
But the point is, nobody's insurance ever goes down.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And the thing is, it's kind of like when people say, "Oh, it's just a little MRR." Don't say the word "little," and don't say that it's only 205. The point is that the company made an investment in its overall cyber preparedness journey called SOC 2 Type 1, which, Jenny, if I'm fair, I fought my sister on tooth and nail, and then I finally gave in because she has this unbelievable chokehold. She reminds me of one
so
of the
expensive. Why do we have to do this?
Why like that really hot woman that is an MMA fighter. That's kind of Angie. And I watched the change occur. So I was like, okay, she was right. I was wrong. This is now on StreamYard forever and always. Yep. But the bigger thing is that what that investment shows customers and also shows partners like you is that we take it seriously too.
Absolutely.
And so this is our job. Our job as practitioners is to not only give you bad news at times, but to save you from yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of our job.
Yeah.
And so, great. We had a cost savings. I think that's wonderful. Kudos. But the bigger thing is that's evidence that we as a practitioner, as Angie would say, we eat our own dog food.
Yep.
It is serious. And oh, by the way, you know what? We may not want to work with you as a customer if you're not going to take your cyber preparedness and readiness serious too, because guess what? You could put Reclamere at risk. You could risk our reputation as a service provider, and we're not going down that road.
Right.
So I think that, those, as we continue to mature through the process, that's what we have to make it clearer and simpler for people to understand. We have to be able to leverage the positivity of the emotional reason to come to the conversation and take action. And we have to continue to demonstrate that we're on our own journey. And by the way, we just want you to come along with us. You don't have to necessarily go through SOC 2 Type 2. I'm not saying that, but you got to do something. You just can't just sit on the sidelines anymore. There's an individual that Angie knows exactly who I'm talking about. Drives me completely and totally crazy because he refuses to spend any level of money at all in his own business when it comes to basic things. And I finally said to him when I was in San Diego, you know what? Good luck to you, dude. Like I wish you the best, but I can't do this anymore because you're not making good business decisions.
Right.
So now we roll into the last piece, which is this whole idea of future-ready risk management. Angie and I have talked about it. I know, Jenny, you and I talked about it when we were in San Diego. Every so often, we will meet these people that say, "Oh, I have to have an annual pen test. I have to do that." Okay, that's okay. And you know what you're going to get, right? Yeah. And they're happy to check their box and they go away. So what can we do today in the course of the next however many minutes? But what can we do today to get leaders to understand, okay, that's fine, but don't we need to have a bigger conversation that says we need to have some form of a security risk assessment or a bigger picture or a better view of the overall security posture of the organization? And if so, if we believe that, how do we get those leaders to come to the table and have that conversation?
So, I mean, you and I talked about this while we're back in the green room, right? People don't understand, today it's 2026. Businesses are falling behind if they don't believe that a part of their responsibility is to look at what security and privacy implications are about with their business. If they are collecting any data, which 100% of companies out there are doing, okay, this should be a part. I'm not saying it's going to be their core competency, but they need to have some responsibility and saying that we need to understand this piece of our business. Okay. So leadership, those that are out there listening right now, if indeed you are not thinking about that, your competitors are. So if you want to stay in a state where you're only going to depend on, maybe you're a business for 30 years. Okay, that's great. Congratulations. You might be able to survive not taking action today. But there are newer companies, maybe even say younger companies than you, that cannot survive on legacy alone. And they must take action. And their action is going to be that they're going to institute technology. They're going to look at what the security and privacy implications are and take responsibility, and they are going to pass you. And so if you don't necessarily want to say security and privacy is important to me right now, you need to say, is my business. Okay. If your business is important to you, the ride is going to have an element of privacy and security. So if you want to be on that ride, which is going to be faster and maybe a little bit scarier, you're going to need to buckle up, and you're going to have that part of your business. You're going to have to look at that, because not just, you're looking at your competitor and what they're doing, but your customers are also going to they're going to want to see that. And if you can't show that, and I'm not saying to get a SOC 2 Type 2. I've gone through it too. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time. It's a great flag wave at the end, and cybersecurity is going to love it. Your business is going to be just run much smoother, right? But it is cost prohibitive at times. It doesn't mean you cannot institute good practices. So if you go back to what Joe said at the beginning, which is your administrative controls, your policies, your procedures, your standards within your organization are incredibly important. You set those standards, and then you go in and you follow those best practices, right? When you get to that point and you're like, you know what, we can't afford a SOC 2 Type 2. Go through the Type 1, get to the Type 2. That's fantastic. That's the road that you go down. Leaders, do not think you can survive on your legacy alone. If you want to be around in the next decade, 2 decades, you want that legacy to continue, you're going to need to adjust.
Yeah,
I can keep talking.
no, you hit so many points. You know, there's this saying that we parents have for our kids. It's like, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. With clients, it's show me who your clients are and I'll show you your future. Oh, you do business with healthcare clients? Guess what? They expect that you abide by the HIPAA security rule. You're in compliance. You get an annual security risk analysis and you're working towards security remediation. Oh, you have employee social security numbers in your own systems. Guess what? You might not think you're regulated, but you are regulated by state data breach and privacy regulations.
Absolutely.
And, you know, show me your clients. Oh, you have clients that work in the defense industrial base? Oh, they're probably CMMC level 1, 2, or 3. And you're approaching a point where if you don't have level 1, 2, or 3 CMMC, you're not going to continue to do business with them.
That's right.
So one of the first things you can do is open up your client list and, you know, run a report out of your accounting system of sales by revenue, and then take your top, I don't know, 15 or 20 clients and figure out what industries they are and what regulations apply to them. Because whatever regulations apply to them, if you transmit, store, process, or in any way access their information or their clients' information, they're going to expect you to have the same or better in place. And they're going to expect you to be able to demonstrate it. And if you have any regulated clients and you also have contracts in place with them, I promise you, if I look at that contract, I am going to find a data security clause or privacy clause in there that you signed a contract and you're not abiding by.
Yeah.
So that's a great place to start. If you don't think you can afford security, look at that top 20 list of clients and ask yourself which one you can afford to lose because you're not able to demonstrate security and compliance for them.
So I think we've had a really good conversation. And Jenny, I'm glad that you joined us today. So if you were queen of the universe, what would be the number one thing that you would want, based on the conversation we had today, but the number one thing that you would ask a group of leaders to consider and act on before the end of Q2 of this year?
Wow. That is an interesting question, Joe. I'll tell you.
And I came up with that on my own. That was not Chat or Claude or whatever these things are that I don't even know how to use. And I used the free version. I put all this information in there, and Angie always gets freaked out when I do that.
Oh gosh, I don't even want to hear that.
I know. She doesn't want to hear it either. Luckily, she's not in the building.
Yeah. So it's already the end of April. So you're talking about 60 days. Okay.
Yep.
So in 60 days, ironically, there's some basic things you could do, right? That you can get accomplished in 60 days. Some of the more complicated things can't necessarily be done in 60 days, but you can get to them. I actually can't believe I'm going to say this because I feel like I made an assumption, which Joe, you actually made me realize that I'm wrong on this assumption. So I'm going to say this. If you're not doing MFA, you're insane at this point. Okay. I assumed everybody's doing MFA, right? And Joe told me, oh no, we have tons of people who still say, I don't need that. That is an easy thing to do. Trust your managed service providers and your IT teams to say that you need to invest a little bit. That is so little for so much. Okay. We're talking about that, what the 10% is, but I can get 60% of the way there. MFA is 100% one of those things. Do that. I would say absolutely tackle your human firewall, recurring training, right? You need to make sure that those people that are your biggest asset are not going to be your ongoing largest vulnerability. somebody told me this story, and they said, they're a growing company. They've been around for a long time. They got a huge state contract. They lost the contract because they got a phishing email. There were some issues with some financial stuff that went around. And that state said, you didn't do the basics. How can we trust you with this? Right. And that's exactly it. Tackle the basics. Do the things. Password keeper. Again, can't believe people are not doing that. There are free versions out there still that you could do. Maybe not the best, but it's better than the sticky note and the Post-its that are all over the monitor, right? Do the basics, right? 60 days, you could do a lot, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot. Trust your technology provider to tell you where you can invest your money wisely. And if you are partnering with the right technology provider, they're going to tell you what you could do now and what you should be doing in the future, and help you budget from year to year, right? That is incredibly important. And, I'll be honest with you. Reclamier, I have a lot of respect for the two of you. One of the things that managed service providers in the past that I've seen have failed, which I know Reclamier does, is they help with budgeting the future. They are not scared to tell you you're going to have to budget this cost. Okay, that means next year the price is going to go up, but there's a reason for it because technology, the ecosystem is changing. Don't punish your technology provider because they're telling you next year it's going to be more expensive. They're doing it because they're doing their job. The managed service provider or IT service, whatever, that is saying it's going to cost the exact same, they're only trying to just keep you where you're at, and that's not what you're paying them to do. So I'd throw that out there. That's what I would say in the next 60 days, but then also long term, like to really build that partnership. That's what you're going to be looking for. It's not always what you want to hear, but it is what is going to help you stay afloat, be doing the right thing.
Well, MFA, Joe knows I have some strong feelings about things. MFA is one of them. If you do not have MFA enabled, shame on you.
Yeah.
If you are an IT person, IT director, and the owner of your company refuses to allow MFA to be enabled because they think it's a pain in the butt, update your resume and get another job. If you're the owner of a company and you have an IT person who tells you, we don't need no stinking MFA, we're good, fire that person. If you have an MSP that is keeping you on as a client while they're allowing you to not have MFA, that is a recipe for disaster. I mean, lack of MFA is just absolute incompetence all the way around. The other thing is that, I have an acceptable use policy that has AI usage in one of the sections. I'm happy to give that to you. Reach out to me, reach out to Joe. We'll email it to you. No strings attached. It's our own policy we use in our own company. You can take it. You can separate out the AI and make AI usage its own policy, however you want to handle it in your company. But definitely do something if you're allowing folks to use that in your environment. At least get some rules of the road, get some guardrails in place on what can be used, how it can be used, and a process for approving that. So those are kind of some of the things that for the next 60 days, I would want to see focused. Here's the reality: prices go up every year for technology. Mm-hmm. One of the best ways to make sure you get the biggest bang for every single dollar you spend is to do a security risk analysis so that you can spend those dollars in ways that are enhancing your cybersecurity, maturing your program. The best thing about a security risk analysis is that your remediation roadmap is your guide to budgeting. When the IT people say these are the things we need, Now you know why, because it's right in alignment with mitigating your critical risks, your high risk, your medium risk, and your low risk. And that's one of the best things you can do to demonstrate to anyone that you have an actual living, breathing security management program within your organization.
Jenny?
Hey, Joe, can I add one more thing? I want to add one more thing. So, we have this nice coffee so that we can talk about AI. So I want to add something about AI. For those leaders that are looking to implement some type of AI within your organization, I think that's great. However, okay, do not look at AI as a replacement to a person. Utilize AI as the ability to make a person more efficient. So it's not about, I'm going to get AI so that I don't have to hire two people. Okay. It's about, I'm going to get AI to help this one person be able to be as efficient as two people. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because AI can be very valuable if you have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Okay? So I cringe when I hear people saying, yeah, we use this to develop this and we didn't need a software developer. We didn't need to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm never going to use that app. Okay. Because my information is going to be out on the dark web, which I know it is already, but with all the breaches that have already occurred out there. But I will have to say that I don't trust that because an expert, a seasoned software developer did not review it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you utilize it and you have a seasoned software developer that's leveraging it so that some of the more tedious things that do take time when it comes to development can be done by the AI, but the oversight is still there, right? Of somebody who really knows your solution, your systems, and your standards, because they're coding standards too, right? That is a good way to utilize AI. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about risk because I actually mentioned this again in the green room. We start chit-chatting about stuff. Is that right now there's like this standard formula of risk, impact, likelihood, all this other kind of stuff. So with AI, you're going to realize that risk formula is going to change in the future. It's not just about, what we're talking about now. It's more because AI, if used in a way which it is autonomous, okay, it causes additional risk that's quite exponential because you can have a higher impact because nobody's watching it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you have AI in place doing something with data and whatnot, and a breach occurs, you may not even be aware of that because there's not somebody oversight. There's no oversight on it. So you need to understand that there can be a good ecosystem where AI is a part of it, but do not think that the ideal is to remove the person from it.
No. Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things I'm also seeing now is that certain professionals are starting to charge more when their clients, their patients come in with AI generated crap and try to and make them defend the stuff. So doctors, lawyers, I was reading an article the other day where lawyers are so sick of their clients coming in with all this AI stuff or sending them paragraph after paragraph of how the AI went through some filing, and they have to spend all of this time reviewing the output from AI, that they're basically telling clients, if we have to review stuff you send us from AI, we're going to charge you more money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think one of the good rules of thumb is that if you're going to use AI for something, the output should be trusted about the same way you would trust a high school or a college intern. So would you take the output from a high school or college intern and file it with a court? Would you rely on it to make a medical decision? Would you rely on it as a business analysis to make decisions? No, you wouldn't. You need experts to review the output of AI. And so making that mistake of, well, AI, I don't have to hire experts, or, I know as much because I can feed stuff into AI. that is another recipe for absolute disaster. View them as a highly skilled assistant, but absolutely positively every single thing that they output has got to be verified with someone with real world expertise.
Yeah.
So Jenny, this is a big week for us. We celebrate our 25th anniversary on Friday. I'm sorry that you can't be with us. We would love to have you here, but I know that coming from Florida is at such short notice would be difficult. So thank you for being a guest on Dave's Security Over Coffee on such an incredible week for Reclamier.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Angie and I told the team that this really needs to be a great celebration because I'll speak for myself. Joe won't be here at the 50th. Maybe I'll make a cameo with my oxygen tank and a wheelchair, but I won't be working then. But in all seriousness, three things. Number one, thank you for being a cool friend and sharing your time and your expertise.
Well, thank you so much for asking.
Number two, if there's anything that we can ever do to help, all you have to do is ask.
Yep.
And number three, I hope that you have a fantastic year, both with your family and in business.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Back at both of you.
Well, thank you.
Jenny.
We're gonna scoot off to the green room, although I'm hoping that this works.
Don't screw it up.
I'm going to do my best.